Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this will be a new line of questioning. Does the executive order prescribe what enforcement measures your agency should use to enforce the executive order?
No, sir.
Okay, so the executive order there's nothing that it tells you or directs you. What statutory authority do you have to suspend the license or permit of one of the regulated entities to enforce an executive order?
So I can, off the top of my head, I don't know the specific statute. I can tell you that the Title 26 vests authority in the agency to suspend a license if a permittee fails to adhere to federal, state, local law.
Law? Okay.
And again, if you want to make a distinction as to whether or not the proclamation is a law or not, or is lawful, that's certainly your prerogative. But the agency takes the opinion that it does represent and has the force of law, and we have the ability and right to enforce it.
Okay, so the violation is against the them following the executive order, though, right? In some cases, right? That's the more material issue, right?
Ultimately, the crux of the emergency suspension is a failure to protect against public safety, which is one of our responsibilities, right? If you, as I do, believe that by failing to take heed of and follow the guidelines within the governor's proclamation, that it leads to a much larger public safety issue, then the agency is certainly within its right to take an administrative enforcement action in order to protect against public safety.
Yeah. So good intentions. Okay. There are thousands. There's several thousand years of history about what good intentions does to liberty and freedom and due process. And so we have a situation, in my personal estimation, where regardless of the intentions, which I believe are all honorable, noble, and all that, regardless of the effectiveness of the decisions to bring about a better result or not is irrelevant in light of the Constitution of the state of Louisiana, the United States, and the law. That's what's required. We change the law when it's necessary, when times change. The legislature is supposed to change. And to circumvent the law to accomplish any good is wrong. It doesn't matter if it's for the good of the people. Again, sidebar conversation, but that's really the situation. You know, it's what you think is in their best interest. But the law doesn't allow, in my opinion, you to do what you've been doing. So the authorization for the governor to issue states of public health emergency and are in chapters 6 and chapters 9 of Title 29, and within Chapter 6, which is the regular Emergency and Disasters Act, let's see, Section 724E says, in the event of an emergency declared by the governor pursuant to this chapter, any person or representative of any firm, partnership, or corporation violating any order, rule, or regulation promulgated pursuant to this chapter, that word promulgated, shall be fined not more than $500 or confined in the parish jail for not more than 6 months or both. No executive order, proclamation, or regulation shall create or define a crime or fix penalties. There is a clear limitation on what penalties or what measures can be taken against the public when a violation of the emergency declaration has occurred. Your suspension of a license for violation of an emergency declaration or the emergency order is not It's not authorized. When looking at your, I've got a couple notices of suspension. What was troubling on one of them is the format is completely different. So I don't know if that's an in-house keeping thing or you got different ways, but it's a little odd to see different formats. But
we have more than one attorney. So
okay, so drafting, and so in looking at the ATC law book and looking at the statute, if I can pull it up. Revised Statute 2690 is dealing with the acts prohibited on licensed premises, suspension, or revocation of permits. Is that section constitute for regulatory purposes kind of the comprehensive authority and items and issues that y'all can act on?
It could be. You have me at a disadvantage. You're referencing a document, and I'm not sure what the factual circumstances are that led to that to be able to say authoritatively one way or another what acts were included and why that was.
Right. Well, in referencing the document, it's referencing this statute specifically.
Yes, that's one of the things that we cite for in these circumstances.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And so, dancing, checked on here. So is dancing a violation of the executive order, or is it a violation of the rules or memo policy promulgated or whatever? Where's the violation on dancing? Is it with the executive order, or is it under the current statute?
There is no statute that prohibits dancing under these extraordinary circumstances where the governor has issued a proclamation with restrictions for public safety that has been upheld by the court system. It is not pursuant to a statute. The citations that are form the part of an overall suspension. Some of them are general, like the one that you spoke of, and that is an act prohibited. Dancing under these circumstances is an act prohibited. That's a statutory citation. Other things such as health and sanitary standards, right? Mm-hmm. It's usually something that we will write for not having a mask or keeping social distance. We have been using the existing provisions under Title 26 and using those specific provisions in order to cite appropriately in order to get to
right. And that's what I noticed. There's some low hanging fruit with regard to enforcement. The fail to keep the premises clean and sanitary. That's what the law says as far as that's a violation and subject to suspension. Again, pre-COVID, are there rules that have been promulgated, again, way before COVID that discuss what clean and sanitary mean as far as an enforceability perspective?
There's only a statute, and it is what it is. There's just a statute within Title 26 that says that
right, and so y'all haven't promulgated rules or regulations
pertaining
to what constitutes sanitary.
No, sir.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Yes, sir.
And there is a sanitary code by that is maintained, and it's all LDH, and I've gone through it. They failed to show up at the Oversight Committee hearing last week, and so I wasn't able to get some of this information. And so, in the violation of that you cite, fail to keep the premises clean and sanitary. How does not wearing a mask constitute failure to keep the premises clean and sanitary?
I'm not sure if that is the reason why that provision was. Again, I don't know the factual circumstances, so it's hard for me to.
Okay, I'm going to make a request for information, if you could.
Yes, sir.
Please provide a list, basically on a per suspension basis, which boxes were checked, which violations occurred, and if possible, because it's not possible to actually know what the nature of the violation was, how egregious it was, what, were there dead animals just in the middle of the room, or was someone not wearing a mask?
Is it fair to say that you're asking us to please provide a list of all acts which would constitute a clean and sanitary violation?
That y'all have actually enforced.
That we've actually enforced.
Yeah, I'm only looking for what you've enforced. So I'm looking for the details on the specific violations that have been enforced.
Yes, sir.
You're done.
Nope. All right. So, why are you choosing to suspend a license on what pre-COVID would be maybe a little absurd to, if it was, let's say if it was a mask violation, right?
We can't cite to a proclamation, although the proclamation is a legal instruction to the agencies to enforce measures that are designed to ensure public safety, right?
Right.
It is far more easy and appropriate to cite to specific statutes that are already on the books in order to support our direction from the governor.
Exactly. So, and again, so what we've done is, with the threat of enforcement from the state fire marshal, who has not cited anyone for a violation because I don't believe he has the legal authority to do it, and then yourself choosing to enforce existing law, albeit maybe a reinterpretation of what constitutes a violation in normal circumstances would not, so we can enforce the executive order, because we can't enforce it independent of something like this outside of the $500 fine and a maybe some jail time.
So, Representative Ivey, that happens all the time, right? As circumstances and situations change, the actual codified law does not always keep up with it. For instance, we regulate tobacco. There was nothing until a few years ago about vape that was included within tobacco, although I don't think anybody here would suggest that vape is not a public safety issue if used inappropriately by underage folks. We had to use what was already on the books in terms of tobacco law in order to cite appropriately and deal with vape. It's the same situation here, I would argue, and that is, yes, we have existing laws on the book that are applicable, and sometimes, depending on the circumstances, it is necessary to look at things a little differently in order to be able to accomplish a true and legal objective. And I believe that we have a true and legal objective in the form of the governor's proclamation.
Okay. I don't know how to respond to, basically, as the executive branch responsible for executing the law as it's written, right? Not as it should be, or based on the new or emerging situations, but as it is, to where your agency can just make those decisions on their own. And so the reason why I'm asking for the details is because if a mask violation constitutes the violation of number 9 on the list here, which is referenced, if that's the violation, then I will say your interpretation to apply this law to that is absolutely wrong, because it says fail to keep the premises clean and sanitary. It's got nothing to do with whether someone's wearing a mask. Does it?
I understand your
okay.
opinion and your position.
I'm not an attorney, and maybe that's the problem, where I tell people I'm not an attorney, but I can read. It says fail to keep the premises clean and sanitary. Premises, not okay. And so I'm going to rest at that. I look forward to some challenges in court to test this, because absent a challenge to the fact that there is no oversight opportunity by by the legislature to the rules and reinterpretations of the law, that you're not providing any actual public notice or opportunity for the public to weigh in on regulatory actions and rules and things like that that are promulgated by your agency, or even presented in an emergency rule before this oversight committee. I mean, why do we need the legislative branch? You did say earlier that under the rule, and it's actually more like under the ruler, because you don't need the legislative branch. We serve no purpose. If the petition is deemed unconstitutional, which I don't believe there's any way in the world that it could, then basically what we have is a situation where any governor can issue any executive order or emergency declaration and require anything from anyone. And there's no ability for the legislature to actually intervene. That sounds crazy, doesn't it? But that's what would, and so
you want me to
I know. Well, y'all are bypassing the process that is clearly defined in law. So
I am an attorney. I have rendered a legal opinion, and certainly disagree with you. And if I felt that I'm a sworn officer of the court, and if I felt that I was violating the law or what what I am supposed to do or not supposed to do as an attorney, I would not be taking this action.
Yeah. Well, I'm privileged to all types of the decision-making processes that legislators use on decisions, and sometimes the political decisions outweigh what prudence or constitutional precedence is established. And so to each his own. But anyway, thank you for your time. I appreciate your patience in dealing with someone like me who can be a little belligerent, but this is
fascinating. I understand that. I'm trying not. I'm not taking anything.
I know, because these are people's lives.
Absolutely.
Someone mentioned like the hurricane, example, having yourself.
Yeah.
I would suggest that is a wholly inadequate comparison in this regard. That with a hurricane, the loss exists, right? Recovery is a process, but there's a turning point. It's clearly defined, right? The hurricane comes and goes. The damage is assessed, and then you begin to rebuild. These people can't rebuild anything because they don't know if next week the governor's not going to issue another emergency order, is going to shut them down completely because of the numbers. So, all right. Thank you all for showing up and trying to represent not just yourselves but a lot of other folks. Thank you.